Sometimes the thing you want is so simple, all you have to do is build it, and you realize you didn't want anything super complicated. Like a country not on fire. Or a Gruul mana dork. In today's episode, we're doing something a little bit different. Well, the same, but different. So, the same in that we are building a $15 deck, but different in that our commander has basically nothing to do with the 99 of our deck, and yet I seem to really love how this deck has been playing out as I've been playtesting it. Everybody, I have a question. What is the most important thing for you to do on turn 2 of a non-CEDH game of Magic the Gathering? And if you answered, play a mana rock, I would say, yeah, in a lot of cases, that's probably the first thing you want to be doing on turn 2. Unless you are a monster who played Sol Ring on turn 1, in which case, that mana rock came down on turn 1 as well, and we all need to kill you first. But, if you do think that dropping that mana rock is very important and having access to turn 2 ramp is great, then I need to introduce you to today's commander, Ruby. Ruby Darin Tracker is a hasted mana dork that gives you a green or a red mana when you tap her. She also has the ability to gain extra power whenever she swings with other creatures with more power, and I'm gonna be honest, absolutely none of that matters. See, here's the deal. All we want our commander to be is a thing that goes into the command zone to give us colors. And then, when we hit turn 2, she's going to be our turn 2 mana rock. After that, we are going to be off to the races. What do I mean by off to the races? Well, we are going to be chock full of nothing but big mana dudes. Just dudes that come down on the board and do their thing and hurt our opponents and make their lives a living hell. That is all they have to do. They can be so simple. Like, this card is so simple, but it is perfect for a deck like this. Meet the Quake Strider Ceratops. For the low price of 6 mana, you get a 12/8. That's all. That's all he is. He's a 12/8. His job is to come down, look at your opponents, and say, block me or die. But they can't always block you or die if you have an aggressive mammoth that's giving him trample, or a giant Ankeg who's giving him trample, or a breaker of armies that's making it impossible to block him, or an Ulamog's Crusher who's taking away all of their blocking resources, or a Terra Stomper who's an 8/8 with trample that can't be countered in his own right and just is there. And you know, we may as well have creatures that can get in there and get over. Like, I'm gonna be honest, one of the things Green usually struggles with is having flyers to not die. So let's throw in a Hornet Queen. You have plenty of these lying around. I promise you, you've got a shit ton from all the precons you picked up, took apart for parts, and then never did anything with afterwards. Then we have Axebane Fox, a Death Touch and Haste creature who's a 4/4. That's already pretty okay, but it's got Ward Collect Evidence for. That's all. It's just a hard ward. It's a hard thing to kill. Otherwise, it's a Death Toucher that's going to keep on swinging in, and nobody's going to want to block it. Then we have Altanak the Thrice Called, or, Beetlejuice. A 9/9 with Trample for 7 that, if it becomes the target of a spell or ability, we draw a card. It's never going to happen. Nobody's going to target this thing unless they are desperately trying not to die, which is kind of what we're going for in the first place. So maybe sometimes we'll draw. And one of the things that Gruul struggles with, in my experience, is drawing cards. It's almost as bad as Boros, where Boros just kind of gets one card at a time, and it usually costs some mana, and then you get sad and wonder why you didn't play Mardu, and then you pick up an Edgar Markov for not $100 anymore, and then you start playing Mardu, and you forget that you were building a Boros deck in the first place, like a normal human being. But there is a way that we can circumvent the problem of not being able to draw too many cards, and that is ignoring the draw step entirely by having a bunch of Cascade nonsense. And we get to be really greedy with the mana for all of these because we have a guaranteed turn 2 ramp spell. Because we have access to that free mana, the only thing these cards need to do is give us incremental advantage. They need not do anything more than that. They need to be things like a big dumb dude that cascades, or, a big dumb spell that kind of cascades and maybe gives us treasures, or a big dumb 8/8 that cascades, Or a big dumb 4/3 that cascades and can escape from the graveyard, or maybe into the time vortex, which does nothing but cascades. Boarding Party, which is another big dumb dude that cascades. Sweet Gum Recluse, which is a big dumb dude that cascades, and also has reach to protect us from the bed bugs that run through the air. Emergent Woodworm, who doesn't really have Cascade, but he does pump up our other dudes, and then they do a pseudo Cascade when they punch. And, we've got Aura Phoenix that has Cascade and Flying, which is a great blocker, and also just kind of sits there and ruins anybody's day. Sunbird Invocation, which, again, doesn't have Cascade, but effectively gives you Cascade, and because we have access to that free mana we're always guaranteed, we are very likely to get up to the mana we need to cast this card. And when we cast this card, if we have this out in my playtests, we keep getting more ramp spells off of it, which let us pay for more big dumb cards like It's Holly, Primal Storm. What's better than cascading off the top of your deck, taking a spell from the top of everybody's deck? And then, of course, we have one of my favorite cards, Monstrous Vortex. If we cast a big dude, which our deck is primarily made out of, we get to Discover X, where X is the spell's mana value, which is basically just another way of saying Cascade, but Wizards of the Coast didn't actually fix it. And cascading into dumb stuff is fine, but we do need a way to win the game. So how do we do that? Well, we've got big dumb dudes, so giving them trample and extra power should be enough to win the game. And we don't have the budget to throw in a Craterhoof behemoth like some kind of heathen, so instead we're gonna go with a Thunderfoot Baloth to give all of our creatures 2/2 every turn, and an End Raise Forerunners that's a 7/7, which gives all of our creatures 2/2 Vigilance and Trample until end of turn, while also being a nice Vigilance hasty trampling boy in his own right. And if we were to lose some of our important game pieces, we should probably have a few ways to recur them. And what better ways than a card that effectively has Cascade stapled to it, while also letting us get another card out of our grave. Walk with Ancestors lets us discover 4 and get a permanent from our grave to our hand. And then, of course, we have Moldgraph Monstrosity. While it does give us 2 random creatures from our graveyard, we are chock so full of big, dumb dudes that it really doesn't matter what the monstrosity gets for us, unless we happen to roll really poorly with this. But that's really no different than what we've been doing with Cascade up to this point. Just kinda hoping our deck gives us something big, dumb, and stupid that'll do its job. And ideally, that should give you an idea of what the core strategy of the deck looks like. We want to have enough mana to cast big dumb dudes, and we want to cast big dumb dudes all the time. And we want there to be no real good target for our opponents to remove with their removal spells. Decks that just have a linchpin of their commander run into the issue of, oh no, you lightning bolted my commander. I guess my deck turned off for a little while. But I think we should ignore that notion entirely, and pretend that the 99 cards in our deck actually matter, and not worry about our command zone. We cast it once, and if it dies afterwards, you don't cast it again. You don't need to cast it again. That's it. We've done our job. We've ramped up to the big dumb dudes. Now just play the big dumb dudes. But, Cascade isn't the only way to get through cards in our deck. We probably should talk about draw power, huh? We're only going to be running a few ways to draw spells, because at this budget we don't have access to the really big juicy ones like Rishkar's Expertise, but the ones we do have here do serve a pretty good purpose on their own. Garruk's Pack Leader draws us a card anytime we play a big dumb dude. Garruk's Uprising does the same thing, while also giving us access to trample on all of our creatures. Harmonize lets us draw 3 cards for the cost of 4, which is easy to do in this deck. We should always have access to this by turn 3 thanks to our commander. Hunter's Insight is a card that you should definitely cut as you are upgrading the deck, but it lets you draw cards equal to the damage one of your creatures deals. There's a lot of ways to screw with the draw power this card can give, so again, this is a budget card that does a lot of work as a budget card, but the minute you are upgrading the deck, this needs to become something like Rishkar's Expertise or Return of the Wild Speaker, anything that will not have the same weaknesses as the Hunter's Insight. Escape to the Wilds lets you exile the top 5 cards of your library and play any of those cards until your next turn. We also get an additional land drop, making it easier to get more and more big dumb dudes on the board. Then we have Brass's Tunnel Grinder, a basically wheel that also allows us to flip into the Searing Rift, which allows all of our permanent spells to effectively cascade. They get Discover X, where Discover X is the spell's mana value of whatever we casted, so long as it was a permanent. Not only does this effectively ramp us by giving us an extra land, but that land is always giving us more free shit. Brass's Tunnel Grinder is insanely powerful in any deck that you can fit it in, especially in a deck where where almost everything is a giant monstrosity that's only real weakness is that it costs mana that our commander is going to help us circumvent. Now, obviously, drawing and cascading into lots of things is a good strategy in its own right to have lots of advantage, but our opponents are trying to gain advantage as well, so we need to be ever vigilant and rip everything they love away from them. So let's talk about doing that. Thankfully, in Gruul, we are starved for choice for giant guys who just happen to rip things our opponents love away from them. And because I am who I am, we gotta start out with my boy, Meteor Golem. This thing gets rid of anything you don't like that's not a land. I love Meteor Golem, you should love Meteor Golem, and if you don't love Meteor Golem, you should reevaluate how you play Magic the Gathering. But for the low mana removal spells, and by spells I mean one spell, we have Abrade to get rid of an artifact or a creature. We also have Natural Reclamation to cascade into more things while also blowing up artifacts or enchantments. Sunder's Shaman, which says that anytime it deals combat damage to a player, we get to destroy an artifact they have. Also, it has Reverse Menace. It can't be blocked by more than one creature, making this a really hard thing to stop over the long course of a game. Steel Hellkite blows up any number of problematic permanents so long as we sink some mana into it. Destructor Dragon can blow up any permanent if it's a non-creature card and only when the dragon dies, but still easy to manage. Nobody wants a dragon hitting them every turn. Decimate blows up 4 permanents, an artifact, creature, land, and an enchantment. This is a haymaker of a removal spell that you should always be running in red-green because it gets rid of everything you need. Acidic Slime can blow up any artifact, enchantment, or a basically non-creature. You can get rid of a land as well. It can't get rid of planeswalkers, but it's got Death Touch, so it's going to be getting in there to kill them anyway with actual violent hands. Terastodon is an elephant that lets us blow up 3 non-creature permanents, and Rampaging War Mammoth is an elephant that allows us to blow up artifacts, but sometimes it's just a big dumb 9/7 dude. Then we have Fiery Confluence to blow up an artifact, deal 2 damage to every opponent, or deal 1 damage to every creature. Because our deck is primarily built with a lot of just huge creatures, the Confluence will work as a board wipe in our deck and not get rid of things that we want to keep on the board. Woodfall Primus can blow up any non-creature permanent, and it's got Trample and Persist, so it's going to stick around and hurt people a lot. Ravager Worm enters the battlefield, allowing you to fight a creature you don't control, and then you can also blow up a land with an activated ability that is not a mana ability, meaning this can get rid of anything that is not a Nykthos Shrine to Nyx or a Phyrexian Altar, or not Phyrexian Altar, but a Phyrexian Tower. Drakazeth Maw of Flames is an all-star in any deck that has big dumb dudes turning sideways, as it blows up 3 creatures every time it swings, and Kogla and Yadaru comes into the battlefield. It can gain Trample and Haste until end of turn, or it can fight a creature you don't control. We can also discard it from our hand to blow up an artifact or enchantment, and then shuffle it into our graveyard, or shuffle it into our library, and then draw a card. This is a wonderful bit of modality to have on any big dumb dude. We're also going to be running an Oblivion Stone as a secondary board wipe with the Fiery Confluence, letting us blow up any non-land permanent, all of the non-land permanents, with the ability to also save our own non-land permanents if we really want. Or it can put a fate counter on any permanent, but come on, you're not going to actually put it on a land. You have no reason to. Most of the time, you should probably just be paying 8 mana into this and blowing up everything on the board with nary a thought. That's probably the best way to play the card, in my opinion. That all said, that is how we are going to ruin our opponent's game plan, but we are a deck with lots of very high-costed creatures, so how are we going to pay for all those? Well... So we are going to be running 14 ramp spells on top of our commander because we need to get to certain numbers. But the rules with these ramp spells are fairly straightforward. We cannot run any 2-mana ramp spells like Rampant Growth because our commander is taking up that spot on her own. There's no reason to kill our commander in any game that we're playing, and if they do, they got rid of a Rampant Growth. That's not really a good use of a Lightning Bolt, as far as I'm concerned. So, where we are sitting right now, every card needs to cost either 4 or 1. It needs to be playable on turn 1, or playable on turn 3 after we play our commander, with one exception. That one exception is Explore the Underdark. This is because this gives us 3 lands. This gives us 2 onto the battlefield and 1 into our hand with the initiative, and because it gives us the initiative, it puts everybody on high alert into fisticuffs mode, because you take the initiative, and then somebody wants to take the initiative back from you. The only problem is you will probably have the biggest creatures on the board at all times, so Explore the Underdark is making everybody want to get into a bare knuckles brawl, where you are the only one who's ever going to win, so I think this fits in perfectly. For 1 mana cards, we have Arbor Elf to untap our forests, Wild Growth to enchant our forests and make them tap for more mana, Utopia Sprawl does the same thing, Elvish Mystic is another 1 mana dork, and Llanowar Elves is a 1 mana dork, and Search for Tomorrow can come down on turn 1 with its Suspend ability. So, these are all the things we want to be seeing on turn 1, but on turn 3, we want to see Map the Frontier, Vastwood Surge, Path of the Animist, Migration Path, Circuitous Route, and Explosive Vegetation. Each and every one of these gets 2 basic lands out of your library and throws them onto the battlefield, ramping you a ton. We are also running a Ranger's Path in here, which grabs specifically 2 forests from the deck and throws them onto the battlefield. This is great as you are upgrading your deck because this can grab dual lands out of your deck, and in Gruul, you've got access to Cindervine, Shelter Thicket, you've got your Shock Land, you've got your Surveil Land. You are starved for choices for things for Ranger's Path, and as you upgrade the deck, Sky Shroud Claim to grab. Speaking O lands, we are going to be running 13 forests and 9 mountains, as we are primarily a green deck, with all of our dual lands being accounted for here. Temple of Abandon comes down and scries us 1. We do want to see this on turn 1 if we do not have a 1 mana dork. I think that a perfect turn 1 hand has a 1 mana dork, but if you have Temple of Abandon and no dork, that is also a reasonably decent hand. Then we have the untapped lands of Game Trail, Command Tower, Cinderglade, Exotic Orchard, and Mossfire Valley. We have a tapped land with Sheltered Thicket because we can crack it away with cycling. It's also searchable with cards that grab forests, so it's fantastic here. And then we have Gruul Turf. Whenever this enters, we get to take a land we control and put it into our hand. This lets us reset utility lands if we are happy to use things like Mosswork Bridge and Pit of Offerings. We have some fetching lands as well to get make sure that we are pretty well set on our mana. We've got Evolving Wilds, Terramorphic Expanse, and Escape Tunnel as the basic ones, and then we've got Myriad Landscape and Blighted Woodland since they can ramp us when we crack them. Then for utility lands, we've got a Kessig Wolf Run to grant trample to something that we like. We've also got Pit of Offerings in order to get rid of problematic cards in graveyards. And then we have a Mosswort Bridge, which allows us free casts from the top of our deck so long as we have creatures with power 10 or greater, which, you know, we should probably have. There's no reason we shouldn't have big dudes in the big dude deck. And that does it for everything in the 99 of our deck. Now, all that's left is to actually play this thing and see how it runs. Now, looking at our opening hand, we have 3 lands, a Garruk's Pack Leader to draw cards, we have a Migration Path and an Explosive Vegetation, and then we have a top end of a Terastodon. I think this is a perfectly keepable hand, so we'll go ahead and run with it and see how it goes. We open up by drawing a Giant Ankheg, which is an okay drop if we don't need to blow up things with the Terastodon, so we're going to open up by playing this forest onto the battlefield. We move into the next turn, we've drawn a Garruk's Uprising, so we're going to play this mountain, tap 2, and then Ruby is going to come onto the board. This means when turn 3 comes around, the only thing we need to do is play Exotic Orchard and tap all of these in order to play Explosive Vegetation and get 2 lands out of our deck and drop them onto the battlefield. Turn 4, we've drawn another land, and on turn 4, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 mana available. I think the correct move in this particular instance is to go ahead and tap 1, 2, 3 to get Garruk's Uprising out, and then tap 1, 2, 3, 4 in order to use Migration Path and yank 2 more lands out of our deck. We move into turn 5, and we've drawn an Annoyed Altasaur. We have 4, 7, 8, 9 mana available to us, so I think it's actually a good idea to go ahead and plot that Altasaur on the board. Let's go ahead and tap 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Altasaur pops out, and it will first cascade us into Fiery Confluence. Let's use this Fiery Confluence to blow up whatever we need. In my case, I'm going to assume my opponents have played things like Soul Rings, so I'm going to start blowing up a shit ton of artifacts, and I'm going to let Ruby sit on the board. Annoyed Altasaur will also draw us a card now that Garruk's Uprising is out, and let's go ahead and knock out the last artifact on the board by abrading it away. Now we move into turn 6. We have an escape tunnel we can go ahead and play to thin our deck out. And now we have 9 mana available, but 10 mana for the playing. So we've got a couple of options here. We could play Garrick's Pack Leader to draw a card and then move into the rest of our turn. And I think that may be the correct thing to do. As much as I want to play the aggressive Mammoth right now, the problem is that our board already has Trample, and we are going to start running out of gas if we don't start using what we have available. So let's go ahead and tap 5. Garrick's Pack Leader comes out, and it will draw us a card. That's a Forest. That's fantastic for a follow-up turn. We swing in with the Annoyed Allosaur to punch somebody in the throat, and we move on to turn 7. We've drawn an Atali, so I think the move now is to go ahead and put the biggest threat we possibly can on the board. We pay 1, 2, 3... 4, 5, 6. Itali comes out, and we draw 2 cards, thanks to the combination of Garrick's Uprising and Garrick's Pack Leader. If the Itali is allowed to live, it will give us a free cast of cards off everybody's deck. It's very unlikely people are going to allow the Itali to live. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 mana available still. Everything in our hand currently costs 6 mana, so we are locked out of being able to do anything as a follow-up. But we move into turn 7. Let's assume that Atali definitely died. Nobody wants that to stick around for any amount of time. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 mana. I think the correct thing to do here is to pay 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and let's put Aura Phoenix out. We know that it's going to draw us 2 cards when it hits, and it's going to cascade into something neat. At least I hope it will. It cascades into an Elvish Mystic. That makes me a little bit sad. Not what I wanted to see, but we do get our draw 2 off of that, and that means we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 mana available, and we have... Let's see. Elvish Mystic will be great for the next turn. We are currently locked with a lot of 6 and 7 mana dudes. This is not generally what we want to see, and in an ideal world, we'd be able to play another spell here. Instead, we just kind of have to swing in with the Altosaur, and we're probably going to be blocking something that's coming at us with the Aura Phoenix, and very likely with the Elvish Mystic. There's not really any negotiations here. Our opponents are going to start trying to get rid of us because we put big dumb dudes out, and we've blown up lots of cards. Speaking of blowing up lots of cards, I think it's time we blow up more of them. Let's go ahead and pay 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8... Terastodon can come out. Terastodon comes onto the battlefield, blowing up a bunch of problematic cards and drawing us 2. We get to play an Arbor Elf off of that, and now we are once again sitting here waiting for our opponents to do anything off of that. We keep swinging it with the Annoyed Altosaur, and this is really all the deck is going to be doing. We're going to put down a big guy. The big guy's probably going to get killed by something, and then we're going to put down another big guy when the next turn comes around. That's all we have to do in order to maintain tempo and advantage here. We pay 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Quake Strider Ceratops comes out, drawing us 2. We can pay 1 to ramp up with a Utopia Sprawl. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. We can Natural Reclamation to get rid of a problematic enchantment on the board, and that will cascade us into a new card. And we're just going to keep on doing this. Brass's Tunnel Grinder is the card that we grab. Let's go ahead and throw away some things we don't need. We don't need this Terramorphic Expanse, and we probably don't need this Ankeg. So we draw 1, 2, 3 off of doing that. We have 1 mana available, and we have a 12, 8, and a 6, 5. And, well, if they do not get rid of the Tunnel Grinder, we're going to ramp a little bit more, and we are then going to be able to use its ability to give us even more advantage. We get to maintain a consistent hand size of anywhere between 4 and 7. We get to always maintain having 1 more big dude on the board. We've blown up about 5 or 6 permanents over the course... No, more than that. We've blown up about 8 permanents over the course of this game, and that's not even counting the people who've had to block our Annoyed Altosaur, who keeps on swinging in and hurting our opponents. Now, it is likely at some point people are going to be getting rid of the Garrick's Pack Leader or the Garrick's Uprising to lower the damage our board is doing, but as of right now, we get to punch people for 18 with 2 giant dinosaurs, and if we manage to hit the next turn, after playing a land, we then get to just do things like drop Kogla and Yadaro out, which is just going to hurt people even further. We also have access to Decimate we can use to get rid of a bunch of problematic cards, and if we want to make sure that our Brass's Tunnel Grinder goes online, we can even use the Decimate to blow up one of our own lands so that Brass's Tunnel Grinder will be able to tick up even further. Going past this, we're just going to keep turning cards sideways and making our opponents get forced to use removal on us over and over and over again. The advantage of a deck like this is that it doesn't look like it's doing a whole lot, but your life points are being tickled down by 6 and 10 every single turn. What it's doing is maintaining a hand advantage and hurting you. And if we did get Kogla out, we now get to draw into the Bloodbraid Challenger and the Monstrous Vortex, allowing us to get to even more dumb cards. But if you had a little more money, what would you do to upgrade a deck like this? If you're upgrading this deck, the first thing you should be doing is making sure that your land count is inflated with lots and lots of MDFCs. Pinnacle Monk gives you access to cards in your graveyard that you need. Stomp Stomp gives you access to more fight spells. Colony Ambush does the same thing. Bridgeworks Battle does the same thing. We're made of big dumb dudes, so Disciple of Freyalise allows you to draw lots and lots of cards while also being an MDFC on the backside. You can also have a huge swing on your turn with an Apex Devastator, giving you Cascade, 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 and also Cascade. If you want to draw tons of cards, Vault-Born Tyrant is amazing for a deck like this. Being a 6/6 trampling guy is already enough to be a problem, but the fact that it gives you a draw clause on top of that and life gain is just a cherry on top. Quilled Great Worm can make all of our big dumb dudes even bigger dumb dudes. Rishkar's Expertise and Return of the Wild Speaker can get us lots of cards in our time of need. Omnath, Locus of Rage, gives you a very powerful engine of destruction that will give you lots and lots of more big dumb dudes, and also if they die, we can burn our opponents with them. Beast Whisperer gives us more access to a consistent draw engine. Kogla gives us a fight spell that we can use in our hand. Trumpeting Carnosaur gives us access to the Discover ability, while also being a 7/6 dinosaur in his own right. Call Forth the Tempest has Cascade twice, which is enough of a reason to play it, but it's also a board wipe on top of that. And Atali Primal Conqueror comes down and steals a card from everybody's library, and then if you are an asshole, if you are evil, if you do not have friends, if you think that fascism is okay, then you might be able to flip him into the card that says Trample Indestructible and also kinda sort of Infect. I'm not saying you should use it. I'm saying bad people use this side of Atali. That's what I'm saying. That all said, hopefully you enjoyed this particular deck tech. I really enjoyed making it. I made this one over the course of a couple of nights while I was over at MagFest, and it's kind of everything that I want to play in a deck that has only one brain cell. Play big guy, drop him on the board, hurt your opponents hard with big guy. It's all the deck really wants to do, and it is fantastic at doing just that. Play one spell a turn, make that one spell count. That all said, let me know what you think in the comment section below. If you haven't already, maybe consider supporting me on Patreon. And hey, if you really want to support the channel, you can also pick up the channel playmat as well. I know it's built from memes from my political channel, but at the same time, if you really want to support what I'm doing over here, then outside of Patreon, this is a great way you can do so while also repping the channel as well. So if you want to go ahead and do that, then I would not only highly recommend it, because it definitely benefits me, but also it would be fantastic to see more of you with this running around. That all said, thank you all for your submissions for decks that you want me to build as well. I will take as many looks at them as I possibly can over the weeks and see what I can build. That all said, thank you for watching. I appreciate every single one of you, and insert end of video tagline here. Hey, thanks for making it to the end of the video. I really could not do any of this without all of you. Those of you watching, and especially those of you who support me on Patreon. I wanted to go ahead and take a minute to thank all of you who do that, because with YouTube being what it is these days, I really cannot do this full time without the support from each and every one of you. Those people would be Red Joker, Purple Poundini, Jemshin, Briskreek, Jupe the Malignant, Michael, Ravelern, Mabbity Babbity, Astral Frontier, Tales of Atonement, Nixie Chan, Kiri Artemis, Victorian Alchemist, I'm not saying the last part of that, and you know that, Arcton Arclacier, Kiratorian, Dren Hadamata, Jordan M, John L, Lord Bleck, Smiling Game Master, and Fire Shard. thank you so very much. But since you're here, why not go ahead and try watching another one? There should be one that's on the screen right now. And if you are a patron of mine, I wanted to go ahead and thank you again for all of your support. There is still a video you could press though, if you'd like. I would appreciate it just a little bit.